I'd say that the latest episode of May I Ask for One Final Thing is an excellent example of the saying, if violence isn't solving your every problem, you're just not using enough of it.
Behave yourself,
Primitive! Get it!
Scarlet, you really are the best anime heroine this season. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, a channel for novice authors by novice authors, because writing is an adventure, it's way more fun with friends, and holy cow, this latest episode went hard. I am pleasantly surprised that a lot of my guesses about what the Prime Minister had planned for Scarlet and for Prince Julius didn't end up happening, and we kind of slid back into your dumb antagonist who makes silly mistakes, which is usually pretty annoying, but the story made up for it with Scarlet just absolutely letting loose and just wrecking everything and everyone in such an over-the-top way that you just can't help but enjoy yourself.
I just walked into a drawing room and happened upon your daughter gleefully committing mass murder! Beautiful enough to adorn the finest jewelry the world has ever seen!
I haven't killed anyone. I don't think.
Scarlet Elvandimian's
Infiltrates the slave trade using a mask that anyone should be able to tell that this is her. Hello, how many beautiful young women are running around with silvery hair and a look like they are about to deck you? I don't know. These nobles must not get out of their homes very often. But in any case, she's able to infiltrate, and Julius, along with others, get in as well. And Julius is just his fantastic, snide, commenty self as he observes everything that's going on, as he kind of eggs on Scarlet a little bit and allows her to absolutely just cut loose when the time is right. Now, one thing I definitely have to say for this episode that it did well is how it communicated just how vile stuff like the slave trade is and was, even in a fantasy setting. And I think that we've gotten maybe a little too lax with this particular topic when it comes to anime, because how many horrible, stupid isekai are out there right now where you can just go get yourself a lusty, busty slave, put a little slave crest on her, and then she's going to be your waifu for life. Oh, it's so just awful and frustrating. And it's nice to see a waifu, in this case, just take down the slave trade in one glorious night.
Hours. You're done. It's time you went home, my lord.
Now, although I was wrong in that the Prime Minister was setting a trap at the slave auction for Scarlet, he's still prepared. He's come prepared with all of his allies to just wreck Scarlet should she show up. Show up she has, and they don't matter a bit. Here we have Mr. Fiery Dude on a dragon. Who really cares what his name is, because he is just gone for this world after getting his face bashed in. I mean, good on him for sticking around just a little bit more. It's clear that he is one of the top leaders of his kingdom, because at least as far as meritocracy goes in a very militaristic society, this guy with his special godly gift of not taking physical harm to the outside, yeah, this guy can take it and dish it out. The only problem is he's not very good at dealing with discombobulation. And this is one of those, again, kind of rare moments moments in anime where the goofy, dumb explanation for how the protagonist is able to take on someone who they shouldn't have been able to works out really well, where Scarlet says, yeah, if I wasn't able to ring his bell and basically shock him through his eardrums and into his brain, then yeah, I would have been screwed. But the best option to me was just to keep hammering his face and keep swinging his head back and forth in a very violent manner, because if you do enough headbanging, you make yourself a little nauseous, you make yourself dizzy, and if you do it enough, especially with all of that force just hitting the brain, which floats around in your skull a little bit, she's probably done some real damage to this guy, and so he is completely helpless, and she's able to just fling him into the distance. Team Rocket is going blasting off again. And now we are set up for the confrontation between Scarlet and the Prime Minister. Woo! I wonder what will happen next. Actually, since the latest episode, I went and I read ahead in the manga, so I do know what's coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't end where I now thought that they would, considering, well, what kind of crazy cliffhanger they actually would have been able to drop on us. So it makes me wonder how they're going to handle the events going into the next episode. And again, this is something that we've talked about a lot here on Camille's Harem, the matter of pacing. Pacing is always a very tricky thing because you want your story to move at its proper pace. Some stories are meant to go very fast, some are meant to go very slow, some go kind of slow and then just accelerate really, really quickly before slowing down again. It all comes down to the story that you wish to tell. May I Ask for One Final Thing is a bombastic story with quite a bit of action, a fair amount of humor, and of course, good doses of violence. As a result, the story actually has to go at a fairly medium pace and then sprints. And when it sprints, it goes all out until it hits the finish line, in order then for you to fully appreciate everything that is going on. May I Ask for One Final Thing does a great job at building up on the consequences of character choices, but it's not necessarily a very cerebral story that requires you to take in so much information in order to make sense of what comes later on. Nor is it like Don to Don, where it's like, hey, all of the stuff that we're showing to you is basically a metaphor for what's happening within the characters' lives. So we are bombarding you with all of this stuff. We're going to overwhelm you with all this imagery so that way you get the point. That is not this show. So again, it's able to move at a pretty good medium pace and then sprint for the action when Scarlet just cuts loose and starts bashing in people's faces and throwing them around like rag dolls. But the danger with that particular pace is that it's very easy to get ahead of where you should probably end a particular scene or a chapter, or in this case, an episode. The manga does a better job of pacing out the action thus far, because again, it ends with a pretty fantastic cliffhanger. And basically, we're going to get what should be the cliffhanger almost at the beginning of the next episode. Now, it tries to cover for that by lore dropping the fact that the pink-haired girl, Teneriza or whatever her bucket is, still kind of an odd name, is an isekai girl from Japan. Oh my. So that's definitely something to chew on and think about for the next episode, but in a way it's almost going to kind of pale a little bit in comparison to what's immediately going to happen, what's immediately going to confront Scarlet. So yeah, we're going to see how it's going to be handled in the next episode. But again, because they are trying to cover so much distance, so much room, I can see why they're again going with this good medium pace, and then really we get a lot of sprinting in the second half of this episode with all the action, with all of the violence, taking down the entire slave trading ring. So yeah, we're going to see how this all pays off in the next episode. So I can't exactly say that it's all a bad thing, but it is something that has me worried, as I've seen how so many other anime have paced their adaptations of the manga material. Now, if there's one thing that I though really do want to focus on in this video, is the use of action. I really enjoy how May I Ask for One Final Thing utilizes the action sequences to help us to better get to understand who Scarlet is. And yes, it's very easy to boil her down to just a maniac who throws fists, but the action allows us to see how she's got a lot of pent-up anger aggression, this sense of justice that's not been allowed to be loose, and a whole lot of ills that she's just been burying down deep and has now festered and boiled within her soul, and it needs release. So when she's describing in almost sexual terms how she's just going to devour and destroy all these people, it's a feast that she has wanted for so long. This lets us know how much it's been eating at her and the joy that she finds in this kind of conflict. Now, that's not a way that you should write every single one of your characters who is scrappy. No, because that can get either really demented or really weird really fast. And the way that the story's able to balance out that personality of hers is by having everyone react in a way more realistic way of like, that's insane, that is messed up, that is way too much, which at the same time also elevates the relationship that she has with Julius, because Julius is the one person who naturally accepts her the way that she is, and even low-key encourages all of this because he knows that it actually does her good, that it's something that makes her happy. So again, a good action sequence tells us a lot about the characters involved, how we get to see their personalities manifested, how we get to see various relationships tried through the fires of conflict. And if it's done well, a good action sequence also helps to move the plot along. Even better yet, when the action helps to bring about resolution or progress to, or maybe even initiate the beginning of a character's arc. And what we're seeing here with Scarlet is that she's already on her personal journey. This is just another very important step along that way, especially when she realizes, oh, the Prime Minister is the one who's kind of been the architect of my pain and agony now for so long, and for the most humiliating night of my life. Oh boy, he definitely will get to be my sweet punching bag. But one of my other takeaways, to kind of loop back on around to the fight at the very end, that too many anime, too many manga have this really weird approach to dealing with OP antagonists, with OP villains, where they're so hard to beat, and so the hero beats them usually on a technicality or on a very weird application of their powers, or a very weird weakness in relation to the villain's powers, or they will only now introduce real world physics while they've never done that up until this point, in order to explain something that will allow them to pull victory out of the jaws of defeat. It gets rather tedious. It gets really annoying. Victories in combat should be something that makes sense to the reader once they're able to see how everything is playing out. And it shouldn't just be aha, here I have my little Deus Ex Machina to make sense of it all. Or here's this random little factoid, or here's this random little application in order to make this all work out. Because you will end up creating, especially for yourself, issues where, you know what, suddenly now that you've created this one little loophole, especially if it's in the application of a hero's powers, you start off a domino chain where other questions now need to be answered. Suddenly, other villains seem like they should be very easily able to take on the hero, or you've just made the hero too powerful and you've set yourself up to where they're just not going to bulldoze their way throughout the story, and it just loses its sense of fun. Now, as we know, Scarlet is someone who can just brawl her way through anyone. However, that might be challenged a little bit in the next episode. We're going to have to see. But in any case, the way that Scarlet's able to pull out the victory here by trying a theory of, okay then, so this guy says that his body's impervious. What about his insides? Can his insides potentially be scrambled? And she goes for one of the weakest points in the human body, which is the head. If you hit the head enough, even with protection around the head, you can cause severe internal damage that will bring someone down even if they have almost no outer wounds. It is a very smart, real move to make, and she's going up against someone who's supposedly impervious. So it is a gamble, and it's a gamble that works because, well, The god has given this man a fantastic body, just not a very good brain. And so, in that case, it does work. You can still split hairs. I will admit, you can still split hairs and say, well, isn't that a little bit still of like we've made a little exception in order to allow the hero to win, or could this be just another application of Deus Ex Machina, or just an overpowered hero, or in this case heroine, who can just bulldoze her way through everything and everyone, so therefore she's not challenged? True, an argument could be made for that, but knowing what I know about what will happen in what happens in the manga and what should be happening in the next episode, I'm going to say it's not quite as OP or Deus Ex Machina as you might think, which allows me to feel a little bit better about how all of this plays out. Because yes, I do want Scarlet at some point to be properly challenged as a character, because that's what allows her then to get some good character progression. And while the fight is her chance to kind of let loose and gain that catharsis and satisfaction for everything that she's gone through, you do want the hero to, even at their best, be challenged in some kind of way. And to be all honest, she was challenged a little bit here, which is good to see, and we're going to see the repercussions of that in the next episode. Because again, May I Ask for One Final Thing is actually really good at following through with consequences, especially the consequences of character choices. So, all in all, I thought that this was an absolutely fun episode. There was a whole lot to laugh and smile at, and I am so excited for even more. Having read just a little bit ahead in the manga, knowing what other kinds of fantastic bits of violence and plot shenaniganery is going to happen, I am so excited. But in the meantime, I want to hear from you what your thoughts were on this episode. Please comment with them down below. I'd love to read what you thought about it. And if you haven't yet checked out, but you've watched this video all the way through, well, thank you very much. And I really do hope that you check it out, because May I Ask for One Final Thing is a phenomenal story. And if you'd like to support everything that I do here on Camille's Harem and here on the interwebs, then please check out the books that I have published. Links for them are in the description below. Please buy a copy. It would help me out a lot. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.